The Princess and the Pea. The king wanted his son to get married. Not just to any girl, and definitely not to a goose girl or somebody in disguise or a fairy. He wanted her to marry a real human princess. And the invitations went out to all the princesses around the kingdom. And they came. Some were tall, some were short, some were thin, some were dark, some were black, some were blue, some were green, some were red. And they were all wearing fine golden crowns and beautiful silk robes, pearls, jewels, diamonds that flashed in the sun. They were all beautiful, whatever their shape or size. Even the frog princess that turned up had to be admitted was a very exquisite shade of green, and she was very lovely. But the king thought there was something not quite princessy about each of them. And the son was getting very frustrated because he'd got all these beautiful young women all desperate to get married to him because he was a very handsome and clever and wise young prince. But the king said, no, that none of them are quite right. I'll know when she comes. And he sent all these beautiful young princesses away, and they were very miserable. And then one dark, stormy night, there was a at the door. And outside in the rain was a girl wearing a golden crown. But her clothes were drenched, her hair looked like she'd been swimming in ditch water. And there was a terrible storm out. Oh, she got leaves and twigs stuck in her hair. Her clothes were all clinging to her. She was shivering. Her teeth were chattering. And the king, who'd opened the door, said, "Can I help you?" And she said, "Please, can I come in and stay the night, sire? I'm a princess. I was on a long journey, and my horse bolted, and I got left by the side of the road, and I'm so lost and cold and frightened. Please, may I come in?" Well, the king wasn't an unkind man, and so he let the girl in, and he had the maidservants give her a nice hot bath and dry her off and give her some supper. And then when she'd been dressed in some of the queen's spare clothes, the king came in and said, "Now, my dear, tell me about yourself." She smiled and curtsied and said, "Well, sire, my name is Princess Rose. I'm the princess of Gamma Gamma Land." And the king said, "I've never heard of Gamma Gamma Land." And she said, "Oh, it's a long way away, sire. I can't go any further tonight. Please, can I possibly stay?" And the king said, "Yes, of course, my dear. I'll just get things arranged for you." And the king and the queen went outside and they whispered behind their hands and they said, "Do you think she's a real princess?" And the queen said, "Leave it to me." And she went down to the kitchen and she borrowed from the cook one dried pea. Now, you don't see dried peas very often these days, but they're very, very hard. They're like a little tiny stone. And the queen went upstairs, and while the maid was making the girl's bed, she popped the pea at the bottom of the bed under the mattresses, and then she commanded that endless mattresses would be piled one on top of the other. 20 mattresses, and when they ran out of mattresses, duvets. And then, when the king came in to wish the young lady good night, he said, "We're going to take you to your room. I hope you don't mind. It's a little unusual. We have a custom in this land that when a new person comes to stay, they have 20 mattresses to sleep on." The girl shrugged and blinked, and she was so tired and so relieved to be inside somewhere, she didn't really care. And when she went into her bedroom, the maids had put a ladder up against the side of the bed, and there was only just room between the bed and the ceiling for her to wriggle in. Well, it was very unusual, but she was so tired she didn't care. She just closed her eyes. The maid turned out the light. The door was shut, and she was left on her own in the dark. In the morning, when she came down, the poor girl had got big black rings under her eyes, and she was so tired she was yawning. And the king said to the princess, "What is the matter, my dear? You look as if you didn't sleep well." And she said, "No, I didn't sleep well at all. I'm terribly sorry. There was just this hard lump in the bed, and whichever way I lay, top or bottom, one side or the other, I just couldn't quite get comfortable. I didn't sleep, and I've got bruises all over me." And the king turned to the queen and smiled, and the queen smiled at the king. And they called the prince and said, "We've found you a real princess at last, for only a real princess would have the sensitivity, the delicacy to feel a pea under all those mattresses." Well, the prince and the princess got to know each other, and they decided they would like to get married. And the pea was put in a museum. Now, that is a very old story, and I'm wondering, when you have your go at rewriting my stories today, if you can have a go and see if you can think of a way of retelling that story, but work out what a princess should or shouldn't be good at, feeling a pea or something else. So, as I say, when you have a go at writing the stories today, think about what you would look for in a prince or a princess. What makes somebody a real prince or princess? And I think if I'd been that princess and I couldn't have slept all night, I'd have said, "I'm not staying here. Your beds are horrible." I think I might have gone home. What would you have done?